You know that feeling when you're alone in your house at night and you hear a creak from the hallway? Your heart stops, your mind races. But here's the thing, humans have been scared of the very real possibility that we might not be alone in our houses for over 3,500 years. And today I'm going to show you the first haunted house ever recorded in history, the violent hauntings where entire families were slaughtered, and the homes where demons don't just go bump in the night, they mimic the voices of the people you loved most. By the end of this video, you'll never look at your own four walls the same way again. But before we talk about modern hauntings, we need to go back, way back, to a time when ghosts weren't just scary stories. They were documented, investigated, and solved by one of history's most unlikely ghost hunters. Picture this. It's 1500 BCE in ancient Babylon. You're a priest, and someone comes to you terrified because they're being haunted. You grab a clay tablet and carefully etch instructions on how to perform an exorcism. That tablet, it still exists today in the British Museum, and it's among the oldest known depictions of supernatural entities ever recorded. But fast forward to ancient Rome, around 100 AD, and we get the first real haunted house investigation. A philosopher named Athenodorus runs a suspiciously cheap house in Athens. Everyone warns him it's haunted. He doesn't care. First night there, he's writing at his desk when he hears it, chains rattling, getting closer and closer, until this ghost, an old man in chains, appears right in front of him. Instead of running, Athenodorus follows the ghost to the courtyard, where it vanishes. The next day, he has them dig up that exact spot. They find human bones bound in chains. After giving them a proper burial, the haunting stopped. This is documented in the letters of Pliny the Younger, and it established something important. This philosophy of proper burial stopping hauntings. It became the foundation of ghost hunting for centuries. And in 1862, one house in England would test that theory like never before, becoming so haunted it would earn a title no building wants. The most haunted house in England. Mansion is being built in Borley, Essex. It's supposed to be a peaceful home for the rotating in the library. Price records temperature drops from 65 degrees Fahrenheit to 49 degrees in certain rooms with no explanation. Mysterious wall writings appear, which he photographs. The house becomes famous worldwide. But here's the twist. In 1948, after Price dies, an investigation reveals he faked some of the phenomena. Witnesses reported seeing stones in his coat pockets. Marianne Foister, who lived there in the 1930s, later admitted she created some of the ghostly noises as pranks. So was it all fake? Not entirely. The house had 14 different families live in it over the years, and children of one rector said they saw absolutely nothing. But something drove people to experience something. The house burned down in 1939, ironically predicted in one of Price's seances. Even in ruins, people reported activity. Borley taught us that fame and fraud can muddy the waters of even the most documented hauntings. But what if I told you there's a house where the hauntings came after something far more real than ghostly nuns? Something that couldn't be faked. 6 people, murdered in their beds, and a family that moved in 13 months later claiming demons were tearing them apart. Welcome to Amityville. Let's talk about the house that scared an entire generation. 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, November 13th of 1974. 3:15 in the morning. Ronald DeFeo Jr. takes a rifle and murders his entire family as they sleep. His parents, his 4 siblings, 6 people dead in their beds. 13 months later, George and Kathy Lutz buy the house dirt cheap because, well, it's a murder house. They move in with their 3 kids. They last 28 days. According to their story, hell literally broke loose. George woke up every single morning at exactly 3:15 a.m., the time of the murders. They claim to see a pig with glowing red eyes staring at them from the windows. Green slime oozed down walls. beds levitated. George claimed to be possessed, chanting demon names during meditation. The famous demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren investigated and photographed what they called a demonic boy, with glowing eyes standing in the house. The Lutz's story became a best-selling book in 1977 and a blockbuster movie in 1979. But here's what really happened. In 1979, DeFeo's lawyer, William Weber, confessed he made up the entire haunting story with the Lutzes, quote, over many bottles of wine, end quote. They wanted to make money and get DeFeo a new trial. The Lutzes had serious financial problems before moving in. Their stepson, Christopher, later revealed George was deep into the occult practices and may have created a toxic environment that felt haunted. The truth? 6 people were brutally murdered in that house. That's the real horror. The ghost story was exploitation. Amityville showed us how media, money, and murder can create a haunting out of thin air. But some houses don't need embellishments. Some houses earn their reputation through violence so brutal, so unsolved, that the terror never truly leaves. And in a small Iowa town in 1912, 8 people, including 6 children, were slaughtered with an axe. The killer? Never caught. And the house? It's waiting for you to visit. June 9th of 1912, Villisca, Iowa. Picture a typical small-town American family. The Moores. Josiah, Sarah, and their 4 kids attend church that evening. Mary Moore invites 2 friends for a sleepover, 12-year-old Lena and 8-year-old Ina Stillinger. They all return home around 10 p.m. By morning, all 8 of them are dead, bludgeoned with an axe while they slept. Every single victim had their face covered with a cloth. All the mirrors in the house were covered. In the attic, investigators found cigarette butts. The killer had snuck in while they were at church and waited in the sweltering attic for hours until they fell asleep. The crime was never solved. Not a single person was convicted despite intense investigations. Over a century later, the house still stands, and it's known as one of the most haunted places in America. The owners restored it to look exactly as it did in 1912. You can tour it. You can even stay overnight. And people who do, they report voices calling their names, furniture moving, shadow figures, and an overwhelming sense of something wrong. In 2014, a paranormal investigator staying in the house stabbed himself in the chest. Robert Stephen Lorson Jr. was found with a self-inflicted stab wound. The exact circumstances remain unclear, but it happened during an overnight paranormal investigation in that house. Here's the thing about violent deaths. Many paranormal researchers believe trauma can literally imprint on a location. 8 people, including 6 children, were brutally murdered here. If hauntings are real, this house earned its reputation the hardest way possible. But not every haunted house starts with tragedy. Sometimes it starts with grief and a fortune too large to spend. And sometimes that grief leads to a woman to build a mansion so bizarre, so endlessly confusing, that it's meant to trap spirits inside forever. Let me introduce you to Sarah Winchester and the house she can never stop building. 1881. Sarah Winchester loses everything. Her baby daughter dies, her husband dies, her father-in-law dies. She inherits a fortune worth about $550 million today, blood money, from the Winchester Rifle Company. Legends say she consulted a medium who told her she was haunted by every person killed by a Winchester rifle. The only way to appease the spirits? Move west and build a house, but never stop building. The moment construction stops, she dies. So in 1886, Sarah buys land in San Jose, California and begins building. For 36 years, construction never stops. Day and night, carpenters hammer away. The house grows into a maze of 160 rooms with the weirdest features you've ever seen. Staircases that lead straight into the ceiling, doors that open to nothing, just a 2-story drop, windows built into the floors, secret passageways everywhere. The theory? It was all designed to confuse the spirits of those likely killed by the Winchester rifles. Here's the truth though. Modern historians found no evidence Sarah ever consulted a medium. That story first appeared in a 1967 book with no sources. What's more likely, Sarah had severe rheumatoid arthritis and needed the warm California weather. A massive 1906 earthquake damaged the house, requiring constant renovations. She was a creative widow with unlimited money and no oversight. But here's what's weird. Even skeptics who work there report strange things. A maintenance worker named Denny went to check the water tower one morning and heard footsteps above him. He followed the sound up 3 floors. The footsteps stayed 1 level ahead. When he reached the roof, no one was there. Shadow figures are the most commonly reported phenomena. Whether Sarah was running from spirits or not, something about that maze-like house still unnerves people today. Sarah Winchester was trying to confuse spirits, keep them lost in a house that made no sense. But what if spirits don't just wander aimlessly? What if they're smarter than that? What if they can study you, learn your voice, copy your face, and use the people you love most as weapons against you? That's not a ghost. That's something far worse. Let's talk about mimic demons. Now we're going to talk about something that'll make your skin crawl. Imagine you're home alone. You hear your mother calling your name from the next room. You go to check, and she's not there. You call her phone, and she's across town. What you heard wasn't your mother, it was something else. Something that knew exactly how to sound like her. In folklore, these are called mimic entities, and they're among the most terrifying things in the paranormal tradition. Unlike regular ghosts, mimics don't just haunt, they hunt. They steal the voices and appearances of people you love and use them as weapons. The most famous historical case? President Abraham Lincoln. In 1860, after his election, Lincoln looked in a mirror and saw 2 reflections of himself. One normal, one pale and sickly looking. He told his wife Mary, and she was terrified. She took it to mean he'd survive his first term, but die during his second. She was right. Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. In Celtic folklore, these entities are called fetch, or fetch life. If you see your own double, it's an omen of death. In German tradition, they're doppelgangers. Almost every culture has some version of this phenomena. The story persists even today. People report hearing family members' voices calling to them from empty rooms. They see figures that look exactly like loved ones, only to discover those people were miles away. According to paranormal tradition, these entities can access the appearance and voice of anyone connected to you. They use this to get close, to isolate, to make you doubt your own sanity. Some researchers believe they're demonic entities, malicious, intelligent, and dangerous. Others think they're just spirits trying desperately to communicate. But what makes them uniquely terrifying is this: they weaponize love. They turn the people you trust most into sources of fear. Mimics are the stuff of legend and folklore, stories passed down through generation. But in 1977, in a small council house in England, something that witnesses claimed could mimic voices, among other things, was caught on tape. Investigators documented it. Witnesses saw it, and an 11-year-old girl became the center of one of the most famous hauntings in modern history. This is the Enfield Poltergeist. August 30th of 1977, Enfield, England. The Hodgson family is about to experience something that will become one of the most documented hauntings in history. It starts innocently enough. 11-year-old Janet and her sister Margaret play with the Ouija board. Bad idea. That night, their bed starts shaking. Knocking sounds come from the walls. Their mother Peggy hears a huge oak chest moving across the floor upstairs. When she tries to stop it, she can't. It's too heavy and it's moving on its own. She calls the police. A policewoman responds, and she sees a chair levitate nearly an inch off the ground and glide 4 feet across the room. She writes an official report. The police can't help, this isn't their jurisdiction. So Peggy calls paranormal investigators Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair from the Society of Psychical Research. What they document over 18 months is insane. Over 2,000 paranormal incidents, 30 witnesses, and then it happens. Janet starts speaking in the voice of an old man. Deep, gravely, wrong. The voice identifies itself as Bill Wilkins, a man who died in that house years earlier. Investigators play recordings of this voice. It's a child's vocal cords producing sounds that shouldn't be physically possible. Even skeptics struggle to fully explain it. Gross witnesses Janet being dragged across the floor by invisible hands. Photographs show her levitating while asleep, toys swirling around her in the air. Ed and Lorraine Warren visit and immediately declare demonic possession. The case explodes in the media. But here's the controversy. Janet later admits she faked about 2% of the incidents to test if the investigators were paying attention. Skeptics jump on this. If she faked some, she faked all. But Janet insists the vast majority was real. The family never profited from the story. They were terrified, trapped in a house they couldn't afford to leave. The case remains one of the best documented hauntings in history. The recordings of Bill Wilkins speaking through an 11-year-old girl still divide researchers today. The Conjuring 2 was based on this story, though Hollywood took major liberties. So we've gone from ancient Rome to modern England, from ghostly nuns to axe murderers, from architectural mazes to demon voices. And now we need to ask the question that matters most. What does it all mean? Here's what we've learned. For over 3,500 years, humans have been scared of houses, from ancient Babylon to modern Iowa. The pattern is always the same. Something terrible happens in a place, and that place never feels the same again. Borley Rectory had centuries of legends. Amityville had a family massacre. Villisca had 8 unsolved murders. The Winchester House, built on the wealth of weapons that killed thousands. And mimics and demons, they're the manifestations of our deepest fears, that people we love can be taken from us, or worse, turned against us. Science has explanations for a lot of this. Infrasound, sound waves below human hearing, can cause feelings of dread and even visual hallucinations. Electromagnetic fields can make people feel watched. Old houses creak because of temperature changes. Carbon monoxide poisoning can cause hallucinations that explain entire hauntings. Mass hysteria can spread fear through communities. But here's what science can't explain. The police officer who filed an official report about a chair moving on its own. The 30 witnesses to the Enfield poltergeist who had nothing to gain. The voice of Bill Wilkins that experts still debate. The consistent reports across centuries and cultures of experiencing the unexplainable. Maybe these hauntings are our way of processing trauma. Maybe they're real. Maybe it doesn't matter. Because what haunted houses really teach us is this. We're terrified of death, of violence, of loss, of the unknown. And sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's in the house. It's what we bring with us. Our fears, our grief, our guilt. Our memories of what happened in places we call home. Every house has a history. Some just tell it louder than others. Now I want to hear from you. Have you experienced something in your home you couldn't explain? A voice you recognized but no one was there? A feeling that you weren't alone? Drop your stories in the comments below, as I read every single one. If you found this video fascinating, hit the like button and subscribe, because next week we're diving into something even darker. Until then, remember this. Every house has a history. Some just tell it louder than others. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.